You are here attending a webinar on CloudSuite FSM Application Configurations. Two wonderful presenters for you here today. And with that, I give you Stephanie and Mike.
Thanks, Keith. And thanks everyone for joining us this morning. We're really excited to tell you all that we know about FSM application configurations. So what's on our agenda today is walking through what a configuration is and how it affects Infor FSM. And then we're going to show you the goods. We're going to show you all the cool things that it can do. And we've also taken some time to show you a little bonus that you'll have to wait to the end to see. So a little bit about us first. We're RPI Consultants. We're based here in Baltimore, but we also have offices in Tampa and Kansas City. So we've been around the space for over 18 years, and we focus on all things Lawson, supply chain, finance, HR, imaging, and we also have a technical practice as well. So anything Infor Lawson, we know it, and we're looking forward to telling you more.
So just an intro on some of the terms that we'll be using throughout the presentation. First off, a configuration refers to a change that covers all of the users of the application. These are usually done by an admin type person and cover everything across the board. Personalization is a change that a user can make themselves for things that only they will see. And a customization is a thing that we don't use anymore. So, just a simple overview of some of these tools and how they work together. So Infor Process Automation does most of the behind the scenes stuff. So for example, for things like action requests, how that process would get routed through, that's all built out within IPA. However, Config Console affects what users actually see. And in many situations, the two tools, they work together. They work with each other to create the needed functionality.
So breaking that down a little bit further, a configuration, there's lots of different things that you can do with Configuration Console. We're really going to be focusing on the application pieces, so adding custom user fields and adding more detail to the form. But you also can dig into security, so modifying any roles, security classes. You also can make modifications to web services and cache management as well. So on to the fun stuff, right? What you're all here for. So breaking down application configurations, you can make changes to data areas, menus, pages, lists, forms, actions, business class relations, and also create your own business classes. So for those of you that haven't yet moved on to FSM version 11, but maybe you do have some landmark applications like contract management, strategic sourcing, GHR. These are all things that you can do and utilize today. So just something to keep in mind. So first things first, user fields. So what we're doing here is we're adding a new custom field for BAA, so Business Associate Agreement, as part of the supplier record. So this isn't something that comes with the application. It's part of your own business process, and you want a way to be able to track whether or not you receive this back from the supplier. So what we're doing here is just adding a user field that's labeled BAA, and we're saying that it's a checkbox. It has this is a very basic setup, but you can do a lot more with it. You can have that field display in a different color or be in bold. You also can have the initial value set, which is really valuable. And you also can do this to fields that already exist, right? So if you have the same supplier group or same company in certain fields, you can just choose to default that in very easily. So here we're adding that user field, and then we're adding it to that supplier record, so you can see that highlighted in yellow. So this is a very easy, quick change for someone to configure and then deploy out to the organization. I would say this probably took 5 minutes. So more of the process is defining what your business requirements are, so you're not configuring all these different things, right? You want to decide together as a team and then move forward with those configurations. All right, so digging into configuring forms. Again, with contract management in mind, there is a lot of integration with strategic sourcing, but we find that a lot of organizations don't implement these at the same time. So there's some fields that can confuse things for the requester. And same thing happens in requisition center or even invoice entry. If you're not using certain fields, the user just thinks they need to fill it in, right? So through configuring forms, you actually can hide things very easily. So in this instance here, we just made a quick change, and then here you can see in the yellow, there's no longer a field there. Another really neat thing that you can do is you can create your own custom buttons. And in this instance here, this organization with their contracts, they wanted to add some capture and retrieval buttons for their documentation that supports this contract. So in document capture, it's adding or opening up their document imaging system, but carrying over some key fields to help with indexing in their document management system. So here it's taking that contract group, that contract number, and that supplier record and sending that over. And then as part of the document retrieval, it's doing something very similar, again, using those index fields to grab what already exists, right? So you can create your own custom buttons to go out to any kind of external site that you wish. All right. So pretty straightforward. This last scenario is one I really like. FSM and what you have today with contract management, strategic sourcing, GHR, it comes with some predefined pages and views for you. That's not all there is, right? You can change those views so that they apply to your business process. And one thing with contract management in particular, they have in-process contracts and activated contracts. They don't have an all contracts view, which can be really helpful for the contract processor to do some basic searching and then export what exactly they're looking for. So what we're doing in this scenario is creating a new page, and we're going to add it to the contract processing area. So here we're selecting pages and going to contract processing page. And then in here we're adding a new tab. So again, here you see in process, active, inactive, close, nothing with all of those statuses together. So once we do the add new tab, it's going to give us a new page here that's blank, and it's asking us whether or not we want to add a new list. In this instance here, it's just one panel, so it's going to be one full list, but you can have multiple panels on a screen. Maybe one has a graph, one has data in it. It's all up to you. So here we're adding a new list, and it's pulling up a wizard for us to follow through. So here we're pulling from the business class name of contract, and we're pulling list name of all contracts. That automatically adds that new tab to the very end, right? Which isn't really helpful or what we're looking for our system. We actually want this to be moved over in between closed and contract hierarchy, because that's where the processor is going to want to see it. To make this change, we're going to go into a different screen. But first, right in that list view, it's going to give us the key actions that the system thinks are helpful. So being able to create a draft from within that view or create an amendment. It doesn't automatically give you the option to export to CSV. So what we're doing here is just editing the toolbar to allow for the export to CSV. And then, like I was talking about earlier, since the tab is at the very end and we want to move it closer, we're going to go to Edit List, which is actually going to bring us to this screen here where we'll go to Edit LPL, which looks a little scary for those that may have not seen it or aren't coders like I'm not, but I was able to do this pretty quickly. So here what I did was I just moved the all contracts that was towards the bottom and put it up here so it's in between closed and the contract hierarchy. So as you can see here, I have the all contracts where I want it, and all the contracts are listed there with my export to CSV right next to my search. So pretty straightforward. I'd say once I figured this out, it took me maybe 10 minutes to change. And you can modify all of your tabs using that same process.
So just like that contracts page, you can make changes to any page that has a list of data. It can be edited. You can change things like columns. You can change the sort order, fields, and you can change what shows up in the toolbar itself. Now, some of these changes, such as the sort order, they just change the default values. So you're not locking anything in, and you can still sort by whatever values you want. You're not necessarily forcing anything right here. It just gives you the option of what shows up first. What you can do is to change the values that each person sees in the list. You can use the condition builder in order to do that. You can use as many statements as you want, and you can choose to match all the following or any of the following rules. So an example of this would be if you wanted to filter down what users see, you would say, for example, you would want to see invoices that are from a certain date and only are tied to a specific user. You can do that using the condition builder and build a page that specific users will see. That way they don't have to, every time they open the page, filter through manually. It'll just show up right here.
All right. One of the latest and greatest things with FSM is action requests. Infor delivers 4 of these as part of version 11. There's request new vendor. There's also requesting a new item. So this is really helpful, right? Because you have all of these outside processes to make up for the fact that you can't utilize your ERP systems to start tracking all of these requests and routing approvals. So action requests really help take care of that. So it's initiated by one user, and then you can route to additional users to approve that request. But the action request itself is pretty basic, right? So you're going to want to configure that so it meets your business process. For the example of a new vendor, maybe you have some specific attachments that they need to sign off on, or attach the W-9, or add what department, more detail about who the requester is themselves. You can utilize all of those what we were talking about earlier with the user fields to make this action request form more detailed and meeting your business needs. And then in this screenshot here, we're walking through what the approvals look like for that specific action request. So here, final approval for the requesting of the new vendor. And at the bottom, you may or may not be able to see, it says save as draft, approve, reject, return, or cancel. So it's a little bit more intuitive, and again, keeping all of that detail in your system of truth and being able to track all that information. Landing pages, super exciting. FSM comes with these landing pages by particular roles, and they allow business users to be able to have more data-rich content to help them make decisions. And you can configure these to meet your needs, which Mike's going to talk through next.
Yep. So unlike a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, this landing page designer is available within the web application. You don't need to install Rich Client in order to access it. You can just get to it straight from the web. And it works as a module, much like any of the other ones available in FSM through the web client. But there is some setup that you need to do in order to get it to work right. So the people who are doing the editing, they will need this landing page all access security class. And in addition, the users who are going to be using these landing pages will need this landing page user access security class too. Otherwise, they won't be able to see the pages that the designers created. There's also an option for users to personalize their own landing page and change some things around. That is available when you're creating the landing page itself. You can select if you want to allow your users to change things, or if you want it to be the same all across the board for everybody. So how it works is you have the default landing pages. They would show up in this active tab. And much like security classes, it's best practice not to touch the default pages. You want to keep that pristine copy just so if you ever need to go back, you can do that. So what you would do, you would modify it. You would create a copy. There's a copy button there. And then they would go to this inactive page. You can edit it from there. And then once you have it edited and set up how you want, you would just activate that one instead. And then the users would be able to see it.
So it sets it to inactive as a means of putting it in draft mode, right?
Yep.
So it doesn't automatically publish it to your
Exactly.
users.
Mm-hmm. And this user interface is very easy. You don't have to worry about editing any LPL code or anything like that. Here's an example of one of these landing pages. You don't have to build it from scratch, although you can. There's a lot of these pre-built templates that you can choose from. This is just a drag and drop interface. You can add, remove widgets, anything you need. And this gives you a lot of options for what you want the users to see as soon as they sign in. There's also the option to build it from scratch. So you build out the landing page, and within that you can also build out a template, so you don't have to build every single page from scratch. You have these options. You can have default images, logos, backgrounds, and things like that, just so you don't have to start from a completely blank slate. It's like a template within a template. It makes actually designing these a lot easier.
Yeah, and you definitely want one consistent view into the information, right? No matter who the user is. So having the same background, same logo, same general look and feel is really important, right? So these landing pages are super valuable. Again, they come with some delivered, but you'll definitely want to configure them so they work for your business process. You know, what are all your buyers looking at? What detail is important to them? What data do they need to look at every day? And kind of bringing all that together. So spending some time during design to make landing pages are going to work for your users, and spending a lot of time during testing, investing in those is really valuable.
And like I said, the users are able to personalize them if you choose to let them. That way, not everyone is locked into a very specific view, and each person can have the landing page display only the information that they need and the information that they're going to be using on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that's a really helpful feature, especially in testing, because you don't want to put your super users in a box, right? Because they're there to help understand the business process a little bit more and talk with your IT support team to go, well, can we add this new column in? And you know, it'd be really helpful if this looked this way. So even if you choose, you know, after implementation, after go live, to shut that down for certain landing pages, it'd be really valuable to keep it turned on during testing and super user training. You have a
I'm
question?
not sure if we've already answered this here, but can you inactivate the default landing page once you've built yours and activated it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. There's also some areas where you can have default landing pages too. So when they log in, they see that specific landing page right away. I don't know if it's part of, I don't know if you can shut that off, but I know as a user, you can say, I want this to be my default landing page. All right, and last but not least, a bonus. All right.
So an example that we used, a real problem that we had to solve with contract management is we wanted to make it so that in this all contracts page, we wanted to make it so that users are able to see certain contracts and only edit certain contracts based on their actor context values. So that could be done with the list editor to change what shows up on the list, like we said earlier. And what you would do is you could use the condition builder to show that the values that show up in this list are like their actor context. However, the condition builder is sometimes a little bit limited. What you can do is you can get a little bit more creative with the rules. Because what was happening is for some users, they had multiple values in their contract type, and that would confuse the list editor. So what you had to do is, instead of using this like syntax, you would have to put like any. So that's not really in the condition builder. That doesn't let you do that. However, there's a guide that Infor provides for all the LPL commands, and that's super helpful for situations like these where you need to develop some sort of workaround. So what this ended up doing was so that users would only see the contracts based on their actor context on this list. However, that list editor doesn't always cover the differences between what contracts they can view and what contracts that they were able to edit. So we had to use a modified security class instead, that they can only see records that match a certain criteria and only edit records that match a certain criteria. So what we ended up doing is writing into the security class that for all inquiries, they could access ones that match their actor context, and they could also view ones of this specific supplier type. So with security, one thing that you will have to remember is that the greatest access always wins. So it's very easy to kind of write in somewhere else that they can edit anything, and that will overwrite any of these restrictions. So what this ended up doing was that they could see all of these contracts, but they weren't able to edit these supplier contracts. There would be an error message that would show up. And this is some ways that where you couldn't necessarily do it with the list editor, you can still get around many of the challenges that you faced by just editing some of the security classes.
So again, this was a scenario where we actually copied the delivered security classes and created a new role to meet this business need. I will say that a lot of the delivered security classes are working out really well, but you may have some unique scenarios where you need to secure things a little bit further. And by utilizing actor context, it's really valuable, but you only can have one. So we couldn't have one actor context for contract type that could do both things. So we had to be creative and utilize another. So this is also done through Configuration Console. So definitely something to look into and consider during your implementation.